Alright, hi everyone. I have been thinking about a lot of people talking about movies looking a little bit strange and not as impressive as they used to look. A lot of the times I think that what they mean is that the overall feel of movies doesn't bring the same atmosphere. We have started this conversation a really long time ago, by the way, 4 years ago or something like that. I just want to bring this up before we get into all the nitty gritty, that I am going to be bringing up a bunch of movies that are big budget and some that are low budget, but the overall idea today is not to say that there's no impressive shots anymore in cinema, or that movies are made willy-nilly nowadays, or anything like that, because I don't think that that's the case. Do I have a bias because I have more of a European sensibility when it comes to films? I am going to be a little bit biased when talking about Hollywood movies, where the rhythm and the shots, the storylines and everything are very American, and it's going to influence it a little bit. As I've said, we have brought up before when I was talking about He's All That, the new adaptation of She's All That from the 90s with Addison Rae. I definitely spoke about some of those issues in that video, but today I want to expand on it. This is the type of tier of movies that has seen the most change, in my opinion, because it's not a high budget movie. But first and foremost, let me tell you what lime lips are so you understand the title of this video, because I think that a lot of people are using lime lips as a reference now, and a lot of people don't really know what is being said exactly. So lime lips is an art reference image that was popularized online after 2016. This is so popular in terms of being a meme that it's literally on Know Your Meme. It is an image that you have probably seen before, I'm gonna assume, because I feel like everyone's seen it. If you've been on the internet, I feel like it was impossible to avoid, especially if you ever watch anything art related. It was created by a makeup artist, Vlad MUA. A lot of people started making drawing tutorials of this image as a reference. This is specifically for people who were learning how to do illustration, how to draw realistically, and even hyper realistically. Anyway, the rest of the context is not that important, to be honest. Basically, the point here is it's art that is completely unaware of conceptual art. It's a type of art that prioritizes something that is more about being hyper realistic and more about being crisp. In terms of skill, this could be something that you find really impressive. I would say that you would have to draw things for a little while to get anything looking hyper realistic. It's a lot of work. It is, however, quite pointless in a world that's moved on past modernism at this point. So it's kind of art that's outside of context, outside of art history. It's art done by people who are not quite there in terms of understanding the role of an artist. Maybe back in the day, in like medieval times, maybe you would get some orders from your wealthy patrons and you could have a pretty great artist career, but it's not the case today. So this is Lime Lips. I hope you guys understand what it's all about now. Why all of these films look like lime lips now. One of the movies that came up a lot is Wicked. I do not want to undermine the work that has been done by people who created Wicked. Wicked is just such a huge production. There's so many different things that were done really well in it that just because there are some things that I would change or things that I think contribute to this movie looking on the surface, just visually speaking as lime lips, just because of that, I don't want to say that the work is not good. I think that Wicked is good, even though it does, in my opinion, have those aspects that do make it look like lime lips. So I want to divorce the idea of the storyline, the performances, even the costuming, the set design outside of this conversation specifically about Wicked. But overall, we definitely have a trend going on here, and specifically, as I've said, it's the most prevalent in movies that are supposed to be B-list or even C-list movies. Back in the day, not to be on like back in the day, but back in the day, a lot of movies still had a very pleasant atmosphere, even in those movies that are genuinely bottom of the barrel type of deal. Bottom of the barrel might be a little bit too far, but okay, let's say the 3/4 down of the barrel, one-time viewing or easy type of viewing. You know, it's not a movie that's going to change your entire life, but it's a very enjoyable story to just put on and, watch with your friends and whatever, right? This is the type of movie that has suffered the most from this change. And that change is going from film to digital. If you are one of the people who actually know shit about this, I'm sorry for bringing it up. I know it's really annoying. I know we've been debating this for ages, okay? I know it. I wasn't born yesterday. I know that we've been talking about it forever. I do think that at this point, with a lot of the cameras that are in rotation now, a lot of the digital cameras that have come about, we know that they can deliver a pretty good product, and you can even emulate a film look if you really want to. Like, if that's your goal, you can do it with digital cameras nowadays. I personally understand why someone who is a conceptual filmmaker and not a storyteller specifically type of filmmaker, I understand why a conceptual artist who just happens to make films would want to use film anyway. Mostly because, in my opinion, what I would use it for, if I had the luxury to do so, it would be because of the chemical reactions that are going on inside of that camera. When the film is exposed like this and there's really random grain going on, I think that it's kind of irreplaceable, in my opinion, in terms of conceptual work, where every single material you use counts. If that's the type of work that you're making, I think that it makes sense. For those of you who are like, well, the grain that you do in post, it's also random. It's this algorithmic whatever. Listen, I'm gonna have to be one of those annoying people and tell you that I don't think I have this connection that you need to have with your medium that you're working with to use something algorithmic as part of the process, as part of my decision making, okay? I'd much rather get something like a roll of film, have this chemical real reaction going on that film than the algorithmic version of it. This is more of a preference, I feel like, but there are very real consequences of the fact that we have moved on from film to digital. And it's not this foo reason that I told you about right now, where it's my personal decision. I think that there is a reason as to why all of these productions that started using digital are running into issues. Because film was so expensive and it wasn't inflated price tag that usually is there for stars and star directors or producers or whatever the hell, right? Because it's just like, it's a material, it's a physical thing that costs money. It's literal silver, so it does cost quite a bit. It makes sense that when people were using film, it was a lot easier to run a production. What I've noticed a lot on productions, whenever I worked on productions, it was pretty small productions. The biggest one I worked on was for a Nickelodeon movie. A lot of people have become a lot more nonchalant, and it's a lot more difficult to get people together for actually shooting the scenes because everyone's rolling all the time. We rarely stop the shot. There's a lot of just rolling going, and because everyone keeps on filming so much and there's no pressure to stop filming, it seems like the discipline or the restrictions that were created by using film have been lost. I thought it was just me who was kind of noticing that, but then I started seeing a lot of other, specifically camera operators, speaking on that and speaking about that, saying that they have noticed that this is probably the biggest difference, is that the fact that it's so easy to continue shooting. And it's the same thing for photography. I think that we have talked about it before. The world, there's been a lot of conversation about how switching from film photography to digital photography has made photographers a lot less capable. There's a lot more people who wouldn't be able to actually compose a shot and do a good job if they couldn't check it immediately and play it back right there, which is like, it's both convenience, which makes it better, but also it's at the same time making you a lot more undisciplined and a lot less tech savvy, a lot less knowledgeable in terms of how to work with light, how to even work with aperture and other shit like that without having this immediate feedback loop, of looking at the screen and seeing what it actually looks like. Now, because we also have this thing of post color correction, a lot of customization that you could do. Just look at DaVinci Resolve. It's a huge tool that could be used to literally do anything with a piece of media in post. On one hand, again, it's a good thing, But on the other hand, I started to notice that more and more every set you see is not being built to already have a very particular strong artistic direction. Obviously, it's not the case for all movies. If you have a really huge production, people are still doing that. At the same time, a lot of movies are made with a lot of blue screens. A lot of movies are made in very drab environments that are a lot easier to manipulate in post and make into something a little bit more striking. I think that it's specifically concerning color and why we see so much reliance on color correction instead of actual physical sets and mise-en-scene. Once again, just my opinion on that. I did watch and read a bunch of different interviews with the director and the DP, and I do not understand why they're like, yeah, we wanted it to be more realistic, like more grounded in reality. To us, Wizard of Oz world is really magical and bright, but to them, it's very pedestrian and normal. They live there every single day. They don't know anything else. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But also like, why? I don't think that it would have taken away anything from the story, to be honest. This is just my opinion. I don't think that it would have made it any more impactful because Elphaba is already a green lady, okay? The behavior that they exhibit, which is like supposed to be comical, is comical. So I don't think that turning up the saturation would have done anything to hurt the impact of the story, to be honest. Regardless of that, the next thing I wanted to discuss is the sharpness. And not only sharpness, but the use of generative AI, precursors to generative AI. Dude, I can't. It's really hard for me to speak Invisalign. I have to wear it because my tooth is in there. If you know, you know. Anyway. And this topic, this generative AI, is connected to frames per second problem, plus on top of it all, the problem of digital media becoming less compatible and less of a high quality than it's supposed to be or that it was when it was initially filmed. You can see what I'm talking about specifically when you look at old shows that have been remastered. For example, Witch and Winx had the shows remastered by the fans, and oftentimes what it means is that they also make it 60 frames per second when the original was about 24. And what it does is it adds other frames in between the frames that were actually drawn. So you would get random configuration of that previous shot to the next one. All those remastering type of things, they're also generating what they think the image was if the image is a little bit too blurry to work with. And it's also usually quite ugly. And if you think, well, Lisa, what the fuck does it have to do, remastering of old shows, what does it have to do with our current state of affairs? And yeah, I mean, I understand why you would be confused about that, but when they're trying to remaster everything, they're trying to remaster it to the new current standards. And oftentimes, a lot of productions have started to film in 60 FPS. A lot of the early Disney shows, not early, 2010s or 2005 and up shows cannot keep up with the requirements of today's screens. Wizards of Waverly Place, that show looks horrific now. At the same time, when you do use better quality cameras, but they are digital, what do you get? Crispness that is on the verge of being fucking creepy. I'm pretty sure I have mentioned it in the video about She's All That because this is one of the biggest issues I have with modern cinematography. I don't have to see all of those details because it makes me feel like I'm looking at something that is even more sharp that my eyes can see. And I'm not enjoying that overstimulation. I think it's kind of like buying a new iPhone and getting Apple Intelligence on it, even if you don't want any fucking AI on your phone. It's like getting a bunch of shit you don't want, being bombarded with information or with options that you don't want to even choose from because you didn't ask for that to begin with. And even when you look at this shot, for example, of Ariana and Cynthia, technically speaking, it's a beautiful shot, but at the same time, it does have something lime-lippy about it, and it is about the fact that it is desaturated while they're being so heightened. Her skin is green, okay? It's already heightened, so it looks a little bit silly when it's heightened but also desaturated. It's kind of like Marvel movies a lot of the time. Sorry to say, I know a lot of people are like mad about it, but Marvel movies do look ugly a lot of the time. Sorry. When you look at it, it's because a lot of the characters are already heightened, so when you try to make them more real by desaturating the movie, you're not doing anybody any favors. It's already a massive green dude with bulging muscles. It's not gonna gonna make it more realistic if everything looks slightly gray around him, okay? And a part of that weird feeling of being bombarded with information is the amount of frames per second. Why on the fuck of the earth are there so many frames per second? It's just getting to a point where you're feeling very uncomfortable watching anything. And I do understand that sometimes people have to film in really high frames per second when they specifically plan on slowing down the footage, doing a slow-mo shot. I get it, okay? Like, I'm not stupid, I get it. But I think it's an overkill when it comes to everything else. There's something dystopian about it, and I don't know why. I feel like it's not really, instead of this positive look at the future, this, this retrofuturistic look in terms of aesthetics, it becomes this crisp, really sanitized, sterile type of image. I feel like sterile is a really good word for it. I hope you guys are picking up what I'm putting down here. A huge part of why movies are struggling so much, especially the mid-tier movies, is because a lot of those movies have cut down on the amount of money they spend on actual production and on the crew, and they have maximized the amount of money that they pay to a star or a couple of stars in the cast, director with a big name or whatever the hell. It has become so inflated. There's a lot of labor violations still going on, and I mean, it's not news to anybody who works in film. I know. I am, however, horrified that this is so normalized to the point where if you don't want to work 19-hour days, and I mean it, bitch, I mean 19-hour days. As a PA, if you don't want to do that for 100 days, you can't even get into a guild. You can't even get into a union. And that's true. That's actually the truth. Okay, so maybe it's not true for Americans. I don't know. I don't know your lives, guys, okay? I don't know your life if you're an American. But in Canada, that's what it is. Like, to get into a union, to get into a guild, you have to put in about 100 days of working as a PA. And oh my God, do they act like absolute assholes when it comes to PAs. It's absolutely diabolical. Honestly, it's kind of like that for anyone who's like crew member, like a person who's actually making the set, lighting the scenes and working on audio, whatever, like all of those people who actually make it happen. Those people, the ways in which producers are trying to cut the amount of money they will pay to people who are like IATSE registered or something like that is insane. Honestly, the amount of money that goes into movies keep getting more and more expensive when they stop building sets as they used to, when they stopped using huge studios, when they stopped having a bunch of people who work on art direction, set design. They have cut down on so many expenses. They cut corners everywhere. And yet, the amount of money that you need to have a movie made keeps going up. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that it does affect the final product a lot. I don't really think it's possible to keep extracting the value and the money from the entirety of the structure, the entirety of this machine that needs to be put together to produce a good product and then still get a good product. This is a problem that we have across all industries. When I talk to you about film or modeling or fashion or whatever the hell, I know that oftentimes people come in and they're like, yeah, it's an issue in all businesses, because our economy is like this. Our economy is created to make things shitty. And I agree with you, but I do want to still talk about how it does what it does in unique ways in every single industry that I have been involved in. The final thing that I think really contributes to the decline is the writing that gets dumbed down on purpose. It's actually a lot of my friends who are writers and they work with Netflix or Hulu or whatever, like any of those companies where their pitch gets picked up or they get picked to be on the writing crew. The amount of times the notes that they get is, please make it easy to understand even when you're not paying attention. By which they mean make it more second screen friendly. If you don't know what that means, it's basically this new assumption that every person who's watching anything, especially on streaming services, is watching it as a second screen type of situation where they are either on their phone and they glance at the screen from time to time, where the movie or the show is being played, or it's the other way around. They're watching a movie, but they're also getting distracted by their phone constantly, right? The notes that my friend was getting was like, can you make these characters repeat it? Can you make this character say what they just did in the previous scene? And it's like, why? The scene itself already did the thing. What's the point of repeating it? What's the point of making this character sound crazy by continually retelling what just happened? In the past, we would always criticize it in movies, and especially if you even went to fucking one film production course, just one, not even the entire course, just a class. One thing that you're gonna get from that class is definitely going to be show, not tell. Okay, it's a visual medium. That's the whole fucking point. However, a lot of movies still had this sin, this problem of constantly having things either explained or presented to us. For example, someone's background, right, as dialogue shoved into every single line in a way where it feels very unnatural. So for example, two friends who have been friends for forever, both of them are like 25 and they've been friends since they were 3, but all of a sudden they walk into a room together and they're like, yeah, I remember how my mom died when I was 7. It's like, yeah, bitch, I think that person would know. It's strange that you're bringing it up in this context with this type of dialogue, with this type of delivery. Like, what the hell is going on? So we used to criticize that, right? Now they said, actually, let's do that with everything. Let's actually show and tell, and then tell again, and then tell again. Let's forget about cinema as an art form and just fucking make it an episode of Dora the Explorer. The point here is, well, yeah, capitalism is ruining everything. Yeah. Like, I come to you every day to deliver the same message. I do think that it also comes down to discipline. It comes down to the fact that a lot of people don't have to actually learn anything about light and movement and the way that the camera, the way that the movies film, how they used to function. They don't have to learn any of that anymore. And I feel like this approach is making our art quite redundant, devoid of any true artistic sensibility, because a lot of people who get into this business or this medium, oftentimes a lot of them are not someone who has trained their eye enough to have this ability to make things look better. And I feel like it's becoming a very pervasive type of issue. And last but not least, I'm going to direct you to a video that I've made about the work of art in the age of mechanical detachment, which is a take on Walter Benjamin's essay, where I'm kind of expanding on that because I talk about how this deterioration of our current culture into this weird ass conservatism and this right-wing politics is making us a lot worse at art. Why, you may ask? Well, it might be because lime lip, you know what? Follow me here on the metaphor. Lime lips aesthetic over actual art, hyperrealism over actual art, and conceptual ideas equals Adolf Hitler's application to an art school with his hyperrealistic drawings. In the 20th century, mind you, I don't know if you guys need a refresher, but the beginning of 20th century, that's like Cubism central, baby. Modernism on crack time, baby. It is conceptual art being born with Marcel Duchamp creating his art bullshit. So both of these supported conceptually by Walter Benjamin's essay. If you want that essay and its connection to fascism to be explained to you, please go over to that other video because it will be too much of a rehash. Like, that whole video is basically about that. If you want to hear anything about futurists, there's a new podcast episode out about futurists. If you want to hear about Honora, there's a new episode about Honora, and I'm yapping about both of those things with my assistant as per usual. So yeah, have a great day. Bye.